I didn't think the moment my entire HOA collapsed would come down to 5 quiet minutes beside a steel gate, but that's exactly how it happened. One minute I was being called a violent trespasser on my own land. The next, the sheriff was staring at a document in my hands and telling a woman twice as loud as she was confident that her HOA didn't legally exist. And standing there, dust hanging in the Wyoming air, I realized just how close I'd come to losing everything my family built. I had been gone for a long time. 18 months of contract work out of state concrete steel, long shifts that blur together until you forget what silence sounds like. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that I was doing it for a reason. Every paycheck, every tax payment, every sleepless night was tied to one thing keeping the Carter Ranch alive. Land my grandfather worked with his bare hands. Land my father bled on land. I learned to drive on before I was tall enough to see over the steering wheel. So when I turned off the county road and rolled toward home, I was expecting quiet. Maybe an overgrown fence line, maybe a broken latch I'd have to fix. What I wasn't expecting was a powder-coated steel gate stretched across my driveway like a barricade. Perfect Lines keypad bolted to a square metal post, a polished sign that looked like it had cost more than my first truck. Willow Ridge Community. Private road. Trespassers will be prosecuted. I slowed to a stop, gravel crunching under my tire's engine, idling rough after 14 hours on the road. And for a second, I just sat there, hands on the wheel, trying to process what I was looking at. The cedar post my grandfather carved our name into back in 1954 was still there, sort of, or what was left of it. Sawed off at the knees, letters hacked in half like someone erased us without even asking. That's when I saw her. White SUV, spotless, parked off to the side like it didn't belong in the dust. She was leaning against the fender phone, all ready to her ear, eyes locked on my truck the second I pulled up. I could hear her through the open window. That's him. Yes, he's here now. He's refusing to leave. I stepped out, boots hitting gravel, stretching my back like I always did after a long drive. She looked me up and down, jeans, work shirt, road stubble, and I could see the judgment land. Not one of us. The verdict was instant. "Can I help you?" I asked. She folded her arms. Mid-40s, perfectly sprayed blonde hair that somehow didn't move in the wind blouse and slacks that looked like they'd never seen real work. "This is Willow Ridge Community Access," she said, slow and patronizing. "Residents only. You can't park here." "I'm not parking," I said. "I'm going home." Her mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "And where exactly would that be?" I nodded past the gate up the rise where I could just see the roof of my hay shed. "Carter Ranch. About 3/4 of a mile up that road. Been in my family since Truman was president." She glanced at the stump of the old cedar post, then back at me like she was deciding whether to laugh. "Sir, there is no Carter Ranch here anymore. This area has been rezoned as part of Willow Ridge Estates. The HOA maintains this road now. You can't just drive up there." That was the first moment the anger hit. Not hot, not explosive. Cold. Heavy. The kind that settles in your chest and makes your jaw tighten. I'd been gone earning the money that paid the taxes on that land, and this woman was telling me it didn't exist. "You the one who cut that post?" I asked. "It was a safety hazard," she said quickly. "The architectural committee approved a unified entry feature." "Funny," I said. "We always called it ours." She raised the phone closer to her ear. "Yes, officer. He's being confrontational now. Yes, I don't feel safe asking him to leave on my own." That's when she gave me her name like it was a badge. Bethany Crowell, president of the Willow Ridge Homeowners Association. And she said the words she liked the most, the ones that tasted like power to her. "You are currently trespassing on HOA-maintained infrastructure." I took a slow breath. I could feel every mile I'd driven, every hour I'd spent away from home. "Look," I said, "I'm not here to argue about landscaping committees. That road is my legal access. I'm driving up it. If you touch that gate," she said, eyes cold, "I will have you arrested." So I did the one thing she didn't expect. I walked back to my truck, reached behind the seat, and pulled out a battered manila envelope held together by rubber bands and habit. Inside were the papers I never traveled without. Deeds, tax statements, A recorded easement from 1954 granting my family a 30-foot wide access road from the county road to the homestead. Heavy paper-yellowed county seal pressed deep, my grandfather's signature at the bottom. I walked back to the gate and held it out. "This road is mine." She didn't even look at it. "I don't discuss legal matters in the street," she said. "If you believe there's a mistake, you can submit a petition to the HOA. We meet the first Tuesday of the month." "I don't submit petitions to people who build gates on my land," I said. The siren started not long after. Distant at first, then closer, wrapping around the hills. Bethany's posture changed. She looked almost pleased, vindicated, like this was the moment she'd been waiting for. When the sheriff arrived, he listened. He looked at the gate. He looked at the papers in my hand. And he did something Bethany didn't expect either. He told her to move her vehicle off my easement. Told me not to cut the lock yet to give the county time to verify records. And then he left, taking the sirens and the immediate authority with him. Bethany drove off without looking at me. But I knew this wasn't over. That night I sat on Mrs. Halverson's porch across the road, listening to things I should have known months ago. How the HOA fined people for wind chimes. How they'd sent letters about my goats damaging community wildlife corridors. How they'd been telling homeowners my ranch was abandoned, that it was part of a future expansion phase. I saw the map. My land, shaded blue, labeled Phase 2 proposed. That's when the doubt crept in. Sitting there with paperwork spread across a kitchen table, I wondered if I'd waited too long. If leaving had been the mistake. If maybe the world really had moved on without me. They had meetings. They had money. They had lawyers. I had old papers and a stubborn sense of right and wrong. For a moment, a real moment, I thought about walking away, selling, letting it go. Because fighting something organized, loud, and confident takes a toll. And I was tired. But then Mrs. Halverson handed me an envelope. County notices returned to sender. A zoning request filed by the HOA labeling my ranch as unoccupied land pending redevelopment. They hadn't just built a gate, they were trying to erase me. That's when the tiredness turned into focus. The next morning I went straight to the sheriff's office, then the county clerk, and in a fluorescent-lit room that smelled like toner and old paper. The truth finally came out. Willow Ridge HOA had forfeited its legal status almost a year earlier. Missed renewals, ignored notices. They didn't legally exist. The clerk printed the easement record and slid it across the counter. "Can't be revoked," she said, "unless you sign off." I hadn't signed anything. By the time we drove back to the gate, word had spread. Homeowners were gathered, phones out, clipboards in hand. Bethany stood at the center chin, high confidence back in place, until the sheriff said the words out loud. Willow Ridge HOA does not currently exist as a legal entity. The color drained from her face. She argued, she denied, she called it a clerical error, and then she lost control, raised her voice, claimed authority she didn't have, and I stepped forward, held up the deed, and said the simplest thing I could. "I'm not claiming anything. I'm showing you." Silence rippled through the crowd. It didn't end there. It escalated. Surveys showed the HOA entrance built 10 feet onto my land. Homeowners came forward with emails, texts, fines, lies. Bethany had told them about me abandoning the property. Recordings captured her saying I didn't belong there anymore. At the county hearing, it all came apart at once. The evidence, the maps, the audio. Bethany shouting about order and cleanliness and how a ranch didn't fit her vision, until the commissioner slammed the gavel and had her escorted out. The ruling was clear. HOA dissolved, violations void, encroachment confirmed. I didn't cheer, I didn't smile. I drove home and found the gate gone. Just bare posts and an open road leading up the hill exactly where it had always been, the way my grandfather intended. I stood there for a long time, dust settling, thinking about how close it came, how easy it is for power to pretend it owns what it didn't earn, and how important it is to stand your ground even when you're tired, even when they're louder, because land doesn't forget who it belongs to, and neither should you.